Good morning, good afternoon, or good night, and welcome to Command Power, the show in which we discuss all things Magic the Gathering with a focus on Commander. And today we have a brand new deck for you, but before that, just a quick reminder to please click like and subscribe if you enjoyed my videos. We're well on our way to 1 million subscribers and every single click counts. And today's deck is going to be centered around the Pride of the Hull Clade. For 10 colorless and 1 green, it's a legendary creature, Crocodile Elk Turtle 215 with this spell costs X less to cast, where X is the total toughness of creatures you control, Defender, and 2 colorless, 2 blue. Until end of turn, target creature you control gets +1/+0, gains whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, draw cards equal to its toughness, and can attack as though it didn't have Defender. So this is one of the best Toughness Matters commanders that we've ever seen. Obviously, Arcade's The Strategist is probably still going to be better if you're playing fully Defender, but this one doesn't require you to, and it allows you to draw an absolute boatload of cards with that ability, particularly if we have some way to make this unblockable, which conveniently we're running quite a few of in the deck. In order to build around this commander, we're going to be including a lot of creatures with high toughness so that he can come down for very cheap. As mentioned, we have a few ways to make it unblockable, which is obviously good as well, and then we're also going to be running a few effects that either care about drawing cards or care about having cards in our hand. It sounds like a really fun commander as long as you can get attacks off with it, so without further ado, let's have a look at the list. And we're starting off with Arixmathi's Slumbering Isle. This is great because even though we have to wait a couple of turns, eventually it's going to have 12 toughness, which is going to help a lot with getting our commander out. Axebane Guardian is very good since we are running quite a few defenders in the deck, which is going to allow us to ramp very hard with this. Bedrock Tortoise makes it very difficult for our opponents to interact during our turn. If they forget about this and hold mana up for removal, we can just really blow them out. And it's basically going to turn all of our high toughness creatures into real hard beaters. Biomancer's Familiar is mostly there just to work with our commander by making its ability half the price. We do have a couple of other activated abilities in the deck, but it is there mostly for the commander. Body of Knowledge does a couple of things. First, having no maximum hand size is great because we're going to be drawing a lot of cards with our commander if things go well, which also means that this is going to be huge, which then also synergizes with our commander. Carven Caryatid has very high toughness for its mana cost and draws us a card when it enters the battlefield, which is great. Carix the Raging Isle is so good with our commander. It basically lets us get it down for 1 mana, and then also it's obviously a great target for our commander's ability. Chasm Skulker is going to be really good if we already have our commander out and are drawing a bunch of cards with it. Crushing Drawbridge does a couple of very good things. First, it's going to give haste to all of our creatures in colorless, which is a really nice ability, but also having 4 toughness helps get our commander out pretty fast. Elusive Crisis is a lot better than it might initially look because having 4 toughness obviously helps with our commander, but it's actually going to evolve very easily because of the 0 power, and after just a couple of evolves, it becomes an amazing target for our commander's ability because it can't be blocked by default. Hover Barrier is another great target for our commander's ability because of course having flying means that it can push damage through very easily. Mistford River Turtle is really solid because it can give any non-human unblockable when it attacks, which means that all we need is this and our commander out, and we can very easily draw 15 cards. Overgrown Battlement is great with all the defender creatures we're running. It can really ramp out our commander very quickly. Psychosis Crawler is an amazing finisher once we have our commander out because we can just swing, deal 15 damage or something to an opponent, and deal 15 extra damage to each opponent by drawing a bunch of cards. Shield Wall Sentinel is an excellent tutor. Usually you're going to be wanting to tutor for your defenders that add mana equal to the defenders you control, but there might be situations where you need something else. Suspicious Bookcase is one of those that you might be wanting to search with Shield Wall Sentinel because it can repeatedly make a creature unblockable. Sylvan Caryatid is great mana fixing that is very difficult to interact with, and if we have a way to make it unblockable, it can even draw us a bunch of cards. Towering Titan is actually incredibly strong in this deck. It's going to come in and be absolutely massive, and then we can sacrifice one of our defender creatures that aren't that useful anymore to give everything trample and possibly finish the game. Triskaidekaphile gives us an alternate win con, which is very easy to achieve in this deck. As I always say, it's useful to have another way to win the game other than just regular damage. Verdant Sun's Avatar should keep us very healthy by gaining us tons of life in this deck. Vine Trellis is a powerful wall that enables a lot of plays to get our commander out on turn 3. Walking Bulwark is a really powerful card in the deck by allowing our creatures to deal damage equal to their toughness and giving them haste. Wall of Blossoms is a classic card that replaces itself while entering the battlefield and reducing our commander's mana cost by 4. Wall of Frost gives us one of the highest toughness for 3 mana, and it also really puts the brake on our opponents trying to attack us. Wall of Roots is a nice way to get some extra mana whilst also providing a huge amount of toughness for its mana cost. Wall of Runes is again incredibly efficient and can really help get our commander out early, and scrying 1 is always helpful. Wall of Stolen Identity is a really unique kind of wall that comes in, taps down one of our opponent's creatures, and then just kinda sticks around. So if we copy something very powerful, we can still make it able to attack with our commander, which is nice. Wall of Tanglecord has huge toughness for its mana cost, which works super well with our commander. Weathered Sentinels discourages being attacked in a very interesting way by turning it into a huge beater that can repay the damage. And Zopandro, Hunger Dominus, is very interesting because it can double the toughness of all of our creatures and double their power, of course, as well, which can lead to some really crazy plays. Moving on to Artful Dodge, we have a very efficient spell that can make up to 2 creatures unblockable. Last March of the Ents is great because we have such high toughnesses in this deck that we're often going to be drawing a ton of cards, and it's very hard for them to remove all of our high toughness creatures. Majestic Genesis is equally very good because, of course, our commander has an incredibly high mana value, which means that this is always going to be looking at the top 11 cards of your library and dumping them onto the battlefield. Moving on to instants, there's not really much to highlight, but I did want to highlight Reverse the Polarity. This is a card that I put into a lot of decks, and it's particularly good here because the can't be blocked mode can be an excellent way to finish the game if we have an effect that lets us deal damage equal to toughness and enough high toughness creatures out. For artifacts, we're running Key to the City. This is one of my favorite cards lately. I've been putting it into a lot of decks and it's really good. Making things unblockable is just a really powerful way to finish the game. And this is a card that sticks around and doesn't really get removed because people don't consider it a threat. It also lets you draw extra cards, so it kind of does everything. Tangleweave Armor is amazing with our commander because it's essentially a 4 mana 11/11, which I think you'll agree is pretty far ahead of the curve. For enchantments, we're running Assault Formation, which is obviously one of the best cards in the deck because dealing damage equal to toughness is something we want to be doing in this deck. We can even dump some extra mana into it to buff our creature's toughness. Ominous Seas should be making a lot of Krakens if our deck is doing what it's supposed to be doing. It's a bit of a win more card, but I still think it's mostly good enough to include. Prof's Eidetic Memory replaces itself immediately, gives us no max hand size, that is something we definitely want, and then eventually when we have our engine going can put a ton of counters on a creature we control. Treefolk Umbra works very well with our commander and basically all of our deck and gives a nice little bit of added protection as well. And Wizard class is good in all 3 modes. The first one of not having maximum hand size is something we care about. Drawing 2 cards is yet another thing that we're interested in, and the final mode is probably the best by allowing us to put counters on our creatures whenever we draw cards. For lands, I wanted to highlight Access Tunnel, which works very well since most of our creatures have very low power. Escape Tunnel is also amazing. Early game we can just use it to search for a land, but late game it becomes an opportunity for a one-shot whenever we have any of our deals damage equal to toughness cards out. Reliquary Tower is really good because we're obviously going to be drawing a ton of cards in this deck. Rogue's Passage is a classic powerful card that's obviously going to work very well in a deck that wants to be dealing combat damage. Scavenger Grounds is a great way to deal with graveyards. We're not really using our graveyard in this deck, so we don't care that it hits our own. And Tectonic Edge can allow us to deal with those problem non-basic lands that our opponents might be running. So there you have it. That has been our The Pride of Hull Clade deck tech. What do you think about this one? I think it looks quite interesting. I'm not sure I'll end up putting it together because I don't have most of the cards for this, but it does seem like a fun deck if you're into that kind of defender theme. But what do you think? Are there any cards you think I missed? Any cards you think I shouldn't have included? Let me know in the comment section below. I read all comments and respond to all of them too. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to click like or subscribe. It really helps the channel. And until next time, take care.